On the morning of October 12, 1986, the body of a beloved baseball legend was discovered floating in the frigid, 15-foot deep waters of northern Lake Michigan. Norm Cash, the Detroit Tigers icon known as Stormin' Norman, was dead at age 52. The autopsy revealed a blood alcohol content more than twice the legal limit, a slip on a wet dock, a blow to the head, a quiet drowning fueled by decades of heavy drinking. It seemed like a tragic, lonely end for a man whose life was defined by laughter and joy. But this sad ending is only a tiny piece of a much bigger story, and the biggest scandal of his career was actually based on a lie. Today, we're uncovering the real truth about Norm Cash, a man who cheated but didn't really cheat, who had one impossible season that haunted him forever, and whose greatest charm was inseparable from his fatal flaw. Norman Dalton Cash was born November 10, 1933, in the small West Texas town of Justisburg. He grew up on a cotton farm, driving tractors from age 10, sometimes working 12 hours a day. This brutal farm life built incredible physical strength, especially in his wrists, which would later power one of the most feared left-handed swings in baseball. The work was relentless, shaped by the demanding rhythms of agricultural life in rural Texas. His father owned 250 acres of fertile land, with 200 acres dedicated to cotton production. Young Norm learned the value of hard work and perseverance, qualities that would serve him throughout his baseball career. But baseball wasn't even his first sport. At Sul Ross State College, Norm was a star halfback. In 1954, he set a school rushing record with 255 yards. He was so good that the NFL's Chicago Bears drafted him in the 13th round. Before he ever became a baseball legend, Norm Cash was talented enough to go pro in football. But he chose baseball, signing with the Chicago White Sox in May 1955. His early career was nothing special. He was a utility player on the 1959 White Sox, hitting .240 with 4 home runs in 58 games. Then came the trade that changed everything. Cleveland traded Cash to Detroit for Steve Demeter, a career minor leaguer who would play only 15 games in the majors. It's one of the most lopsided trades in baseball history. When Norm arrived in Detroit for 1960, he showed promise, hitting .286 with 18 home runs. But nobody could have predicted what was about to happen in 1961. It's amazing how many great athletes master more than one sport. Who's the best multi-sport athlete you can think of? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories like Norm's. The 1961 season is mostly remembered for Roger Maris breaking Babe Ruth's home run record, but in Detroit, Norm Cash was putting together one of the most statistically impossible seasons in baseball history. He won the American League batting title with a .361 average, a mark no Tiger would beat for 46 years. He crushed 41 home runs, drove in 132 runs, and scored 119 times. He drew 124 walks, leading to a 487 on-base percentage and 1.148 OPS, both best in all of Major League Baseball. His OPS plus of 201 meant he was more than twice as productive as a league average hitter. His 9.2 wins above replacement was more than double his career average. For one magical season, Norm Cash performed at a level equal to Mickey Mantle and Stan Musial. The sheer improbability of this performance is best illustrated by comparing it directly to the rest of his solid but not legendary career. Several factors contributed to this perfect storm. The 1961 expansion diluted the pitching talent pool across the league. Run scoring jumped significantly, and 6 different American League players hit 40 or more home runs that season, including Cash, Maris, Mantle, and Jim Gentile. Tiger Stadium's right field foul pole was just 325 feet away, and the overhanging second deck turned fly balls into home runs. As a powerful left-handed hitter, Cash was perfectly built to exploit these famously friendly confines. Cash possessed legendary power and would hit fair balls completely out of Tiger Stadium 4 times in his career, a feat accomplished by only a handful of players in the ballpark's history. Years later, with his trademark humor, Cash explained his success simply: "I owe my success to expansion pitching, a short right field fence, and my hollow bat." That last part became the biggest controversy. In a 1981 Sports Illustrated article, Cash openly admitted he had used an illegal corked bat throughout the 1961 season, and at other points in his career. He demonstrated his method, drilling a hole in his bats and filling it with cork, sawdust, and glue. This was a clear violation of baseball's rules. The American League chose not to investigate or take any action, effectively letting the admission fade without official consequence. But here's where the big lie comes in. For decades, people believed Norm Cash cheated his way to the batting title, but modern science tells a completely different story. The belief was that a lighter, corked bat allowed greater bat speed, which would translate into hitting the ball farther. Physics has completely debunked this myth. While corking lightens the bat and increases swing speed, it also reduces the bat's mass. Force on a baseball is a function of both mass and velocity. The loss of mass from hollowing out the bat actually cancels out any advantage from a faster swing. According to tests and specialists, a corked bat does not help a batter hit harder or farther. It may even be a hindrance. So here's the incredible truth. Norm Cash's legacy is forever linked to an act of cheating that provided no actual physical advantage. The benefit was almost certainly psychological. unethical. Believing he held a secret weapon gave him invincible confidence at the plate. He was a cheater whose cheating didn't work. The scandal was nullified by physics. The monumental success of 1961 became both blessing and curse. In 1962, his batting average plummeted to 243, a 118-point drop, the largest in history for a reigning batting champion. Fans expected superhuman performance every year. When he settled into being an excellent power hitter, cheers turned to boos. Cash was keenly aware of this. "The only mistake I made in my whole baseball career was hitting 361 that one year," he said, "because ever since then, people have expected me to keep on doing it." But Norm Cash was far more than a one-year wonder. He was consistently productive for over a decade. He hit 20 or more home runs in 10 of the next 11 seasons and surpassed 30 homers 4 more times. He made 5 All-Star teams and was twice named Comeback Player of the Year. When he retired, his 377 career home runs ranked 4th all-time among AL left-handed hitters, behind only Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Lou Gehrig. His career was viewed as a long descent from an unreachable peak. This unfair framing prevented proper appreciation of one of the best first basemen of his era. His defense also gets overlooked. Though he never won a Gold Glove, Cash was widely regarded as one of the best defensive first basemen in the game. He led the league in fielding percentage twice and assists 3 times, posting a .992 career fielding percentage. He retired holding numerous Tigers franchise records for fielding at first base. The ultimate validation came in 1968. In the World Series against St. Louis, with the Tigers facing a 3-1 deficit, Cash led all Tigers hitters with a .385 average, hit a crucial home run, and drove in 5 runs as Detroit won the championship. It proved he was far more than a statistical anomaly. Beyond statistics, Norm Cash's legacy is that of a beloved character. His most famous stunt occurred on July 15, 1973. Nolan Ryan was completing his second no-hitter against the Tigers. With 2 outs in the 9th, Cash emerged with a wooden table leg he'd sawed off clubhouse furniture. Umpire Ron Luciano ordered him to get a regulation bat. Cash's reply became legendary. "Why not? I won't hit him anyway." He grabbed a real bat and popped out, proving his point with a laugh. After another rain delay, Cash trotted to second base, telling the umpire he'd stole the base during the storm. Al Kaline recalled, "Whenever you mention Norm Cash, I just smile. He was just a fun guy to be around and a great teammate." Former pitcher Jerry Casal said, "There was no one nicer than Norm Cash." This explains how a player could admit to cheating and remain beloved. His transgressions were seen as extensions of his prankster personality, not malicious acts. He joked about his rule-bending, turning potential scandal into another Stormin' Norman story. But the same hard-living nature that made Cash a legend contained the seeds of his downfall. His drinking was legendary during his playing days. What was once charm began exacting a severe toll after his career ended in 1974. In 1979, at age 45, Cash suffered a major stroke. Even this didn't compel him to stop drinking. He recovered to begin broadcasting. His folksy charm made him a natural fit, and he even earned a contract with ABC for Monday Night Baseball. But in 1983, partial facial paralysis ended that career. By 1986, his poor health was apparent. His death wasn't a sudden incident, but the final chapter in a long decline. The end came on October 11, 1986. Cash was on Beaver Island in northern Lake Michigan. After dinner and several vodka tonics, he walked down to check on his cabin cruiser, named the Stormin' Norman. Wearing cowboy boots on the slick, rain-soaked dock, he lost his footing, struck his head, and fell unconscious into the frigid water. His body was discovered the next morning in 15 feet of water. The autopsy confirmed he drowned after striking his head, with a blood alcohol content of 0.18%, more than twice the legal limit. The hard-drinking lifestyle that had been part of his legend directly led to his premature death. The life and death of Norm Cash present one of the most compelling stories in baseball. To reconcile his legacy is to embrace its contradictions. He wasn't merely a one-year wonder. He was a consistently excellent first baseman and World Series champion whose career was unfairly distorted by one brilliant season. He wasn't simply a cheater. His famous transgression was likely rendered irrelevant by physics. His open admission was part of the prankster persona that made him beloved, transforming what could have been scandal into another colorful chapter. Most profoundly, the legendary drinking that fueled his charisma was the same demon that led to his decline and death. His greatest charm was also his fatal flaw. Norm Cash's story reminds us of the fragile human beings who play the games we love. He was a man of immense talent who brought immense joy to the game, but he also fought a losing battle with a devastating illness. His legacy is a story of brilliance, humor, and heartbreak that resonates long after the cheers have faded. If you enjoyed learning the real truth about Stormin' Norman, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what other baseball legends you'd like us to cover next. When Tony Fernandez died in 2020, the tragic truth behind his passing revealed a story far different from what the public believed about this baseball legend. Most fans remembered him for one devastating error in Game 7 of the 1997 World Series. But the real tragedy was the quiet battle he fought for years that nobody knew about. Tony Fernandez was one of baseball's most graceful shortstops, a 5-time All-Star who earned 4 straight Gold Glove awards from 1986 to 1989. Born in San Pedro de Macorís, Libertadores in the Dominican Republic, he was signed by the Toronto Blue Jays at just 17 years old in 1979. When he made his debut in 1983, nobody could have predicted the incredible career that would follow. His defensive skills were legendary. Fernandez had a signature move where he would make an underhanded throw to first base on balls hit far to his right. Fans loved watching him play because he made the hardest plays look effortless. His range was so impressive that people said he had the range of a Texas cattleman. But Tony wasn't just about defense. He could hit too, batting over 300 four times in his career and setting a major league record for shortstops with 213 hits in 1986. The Blue Jays became Tony's home, and he became theirs. By 1985, he was their full-time shortstop and helped them win their first division title. For years, he was the heart of that Toronto infield, beloved by fans who appreciated his quiet professionalism and incredible skill. His career statistics tell the story of consistency and excellence. A .288 batting average, 2,176 hits, 94 home runs, and 844 RBIs over 2,158 games. What made Tony special wasn't just his numbers, though. He played with a style that was both graceful and unconventional. His defensive artistry went beyond the typical shortstop fundamentals. He had an instinct for the game that allowed him to anticipate where the ball would go before it even left the bat. This natural ability, combined with his dedication to perfecting his craft, made him one of the most respected defensive players of his era. If you're enjoying learning about Tony's incredible story, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments what you think was his most impressive achievement on the field. Then came a trade that would change everything. Before the 1991 season, the Blue Jays traded Fernandez and star first baseman Fred McGriff to the San Diego Padres for Roberto Alomar and Joe Carter. This trade seemed to hurt Toronto at first, but it actually set up their championship runs. The players they got back would become the core of their back-to-back World Series teams in 1992 and 1993. Tony continued to excel with the Padres, earning an All-Star selection in 1992. But baseball had more surprises in store. In the middle of the 1993 season, after a disappointing start with the New York Mets, Tony found himself traded back to Toronto. This return would create one of baseball's most beautiful comeback stories. The 1993 World Series against the Philadelphia Phillies became Tony's shining moment. He batted .333 with a .423 on-base percentage and drove in 9 runs, setting a record for shortstops in the World Series. He had come full circle from being a cornerstone of the team's early success, being traded away to help build a championship team, and finally returning to be a key part of that very championship. It was like something out of a movie. During this championship run, Tony showed why he was so valuable beyond his statistics. His veteran leadership and clutch hitting provided the Blue Jays with exactly what they needed in pressure situations. The fact that he could return to a team he had helped build and immediately contribute to their ultimate success speaks to both his talent and his character. This World Series performance should have been the defining moment of his career, but fate had other plans. After winning the World Series, Tony's career took him to several more teams. He played for the Cincinnati Reds, New York Yankees, and Cleveland Indians. While with the Yankees in 1995, he accomplished the rare feat of hitting for the cycle, becoming one of only a few players to achieve this milestone. This achievement showed that even in the later stages of his career, Tony could still produce magical moments on the baseball field. Interestingly, when Tony got injured in 1996 and missed the entire season, his roster spot led to the major league debut of a young shortstop named Derek Jeter. This moment highlights how Tony's career quietly influenced baseball history in ways that most fans never realized. His injury opened the door for one of the greatest careers in Yankees history, showing how interconnected the sport really is. The 1997 season with Cleveland would become both Tony's greatest triumph and his most haunting moment. In Game 6 of the American League Championship Series against Baltimore, with the score tied 0-0 in the 11th inning, Tony hit a game-winning home run off Armando Benitez. It was his first postseason home run, and it sent the Indians to the World Series. When asked about the clutch hit, Tony didn't credit luck or destiny. Instead, he said, "I don't believe in destiny. I believe God put me in that game for a reason." This statement revealed the depth of Tony's faith and how it shaped his perspective on both success and failure. His belief that everything happened for a divine purpose would become crucial in how he handled what came next. The same faith that allowed him to see meaning in his triumph would help him cope with his most difficult moment. But then came Game 7 of the World Series against the Florida Marlins. Tony had already contributed to Cleveland's offense that night, hitting a 2-run single that accounted for all of their runs. With the score tied in the bottom of the 11th inning, a ground ball hit by Craig Counsell rolled under Tony's glove at second base. The error allowed Bobby Bonilla to reach base, and 3 batters later, Edgar Renteria hit a walk-off single to win the championship for the Marlins. That single error would haunt Tony's legacy in the public eye. Despite a career filled with Gold Gloves, All-Star appearances, and clutch performances, many fans would remember him primarily for that one mistake. But Tony handled it with incredible grace. He offered no excuses, simply saying he just missed the ball. and that he would have to live with it, but this too shall pass. This reaction revealed the true character of Tony Fernandez. He was a deeply religious man whose faith shaped every aspect of his life. After his playing career, he became an ordained minister and founded the Tony Fernandez Foundation to help underprivileged children become productive citizens. His quiet demeanor and strong Christian beliefs meant he often avoided the late-night activities that were common for team bonding. Unfortunately, Tony's quiet nature was often misunderstood. Because English was his second language and he avoided the typical revelry of professional athletes, some reporters saw him as sullen and diffident. This was a cultural and linguistic misunderstanding that Tony addressed directly, explaining that Latin players were often misunderstood and that the difficulties of changing cultures hadn't been fully appreciated. The truth about Tony's character came from those who knew him best. His teammates and coaches consistently described him as one of the finest people they ever met. Blue Jays manager Buck Martinez called him one of the finest people I ever met in baseball, and noted the joy he had when he played the game. After Tony's death, tributes poured in from former teammates. David Wells called him a great teammate and friend, while Todd Stottlemyre said he influenced my life in a positive way and made everyone around him better. Dan Plesac referred to him as a kind, gentle giant of a man. But here's where the real tragic truth begins to emerge. In 2017, Tony revealed something he had kept private for years. He had been diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease, an inherited disorder where fluid-filled cysts form in the kidneys, causing them to enlarge and lose function over time. This wasn't just a recent diagnosis. Tony had been quietly battling this disease while dealing with public criticism about his career-defining error. The disease progressed slowly but steadily. Tony had been on a waiting list for a kidney transplant and had been undergoing dialysis for many years. While fans debated his legacy and that one mistake in 1997, Tony was fighting for his life in private. He never complained or sought sympathy, just continued his charitable work and maintained his dignity. In early 2020, Tony's health took a critical turn. He was hospitalized in Florida where he suffered a stroke and developed pneumonia. The complications were severe enough that he had to be placed in a medically induced coma. On February 16, 2020, Tony Fernandez passed away at age 57 from complications related to his kidney disease and the stroke. The outpouring of grief from the baseball community was immediate and heartfelt. Players, coaches, and fans who had focused on his World Series error suddenly realized they had lost a truly special person. The Blue Jays honored his memory in the most meaningful way possible, wearing a special commemorative uniform patch with the number 1, the same number he wore as a rookie. Tony remains the Blue Jays' all-time leader in hits with 1,883, games played with 1,450, and triples with 72. He was inducted into the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in 2008, and his name was elevated to the Blue Jays' level of excellence. These honors show that his legacy was never really about that one error in 1997. The tragic truth about Tony Fernandez's death wasn't just that he died too young from kidney disease. The real tragedy was that while the public focused on one moment of failure, he was quietly battling a terminal illness with the same grace and dignity he showed throughout his career. He never used his health struggles as an excuse or sought pity. He just lived his faith and helped others until the very end. Tony's story teaches us that our public perception of athletes often misses the complete picture. Here was a man who transcended baseball through his character, faith, and generosity. His legacy isn't defined by one error in a World Series game, but by a lifetime of excellence, humility, and service to others. Subscribe to hear more stories about the real people behind baseball's biggest moments. And let us know in the comments what you think was the most impressive part of Tony Fernandez's incredible journey, both on and off the field. The story of Alex Johnson isn't about a horrible ending. It's about a man who accidentally changed professional sports forever. While his career was marked by conflict and misunderstanding, his legacy became something far more important than any batting title could ever be. Alexander Johnson was born on December 7, 1942 in Helena, Arkansas, but grew up in Detroit, Michigan. From the start, his athletic gifts were obvious. He played sandlot baseball with future major leaguers Bill Freehan and Willie Horton. His natural ability was so impressive that he earned a football scholarship to Michigan State University. But Alex chose baseball instead, believing he could advance faster in that sport. His decision proved smart. The Philadelphia Phillies signed him in 1961, and he quickly moved up through the minor leagues. In 1962, he won a batting title in the Class D Florida State League with a .313 average. The next year, he earned the league MVP award with a .309 average, 35 home runs, and 128 RBIs. By July 1964, at just 21 years old, he was playing in the major leagues, hitting .303 in his first season. Alex was the kind of player teams dreamed of having. He was a line drive hitter with incredible bat speed and a powerful throwing arm. His talent was so valued that he became the key piece in a major trade for two established All-Stars, Bill White and Dick Groat. This trade showed just how much baseball people believed in his ability. But even with all this success, problems were starting to show. His teammates in Philadelphia jokingly called him Iron Hands because of his defensive struggles. After a solid 294 season in 1965, the Phillies traded him to the St. Louis Cardinals. The Cardinals' batting coach, Dick Seisler, quickly became frustrated with Alex, saying he was at the end of his rope because Johnson showed no interest, even at clubhouse meetings. This pattern would repeat throughout his career. Teams wanted his talent, but struggled with his behavior. What they didn't understand was that Alex was fighting battles they couldn't see. If you're finding this story interesting and want to hear more about athletes who overcame challenges, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what other players' stories you'd like to hear about. The one bright spot came with the Cincinnati Reds from 1968 to 1969. Manager Dave Bristol took a different approach. Instead of trying to change Alex, he simply left him alone. Under this laissez-faire style, Alex flourished. He was named Comeback Player of the Year in 1968 after hitting .312, then followed up with a .315 average and a career-high 17 home runs in 1969. This period proved that Alex could succeed when managed with understanding rather than force. But the peace didn't last. In 1970, Alex was traded to the California Angels. Ironically, this would be both the best and worst chapter of his career. He had his greatest individual success in 1970, winning the American League batting title on the final day of the season, beating Carl Yastrzemski by just 0.003 percentage points. Despite this amazing achievement, controversy followed. Alex was repeatedly fined for loafing and not running out ground balls. The situation got worse in 1971. Manager Lefty Phillips benched him 5 times and fined him 29 times for what they called indifferent play. Each punishment seemed to make things worse, creating a cycle where Alex became more withdrawn and the team responded with more discipline. The tension went beyond the field. Alex developed an angry relationship with the Southern California media. He yelled at reporters, physically tried to remove a writer from the clubhouse, and even poured coffee grounds into a reporter's typewriter. These weren't the actions of someone being difficult for no reason. They were signs of a man in serious emotional distress. Things reached a breaking point with a bizarre incident involving his teammate Chico Ruiz. Alex claimed that Ruiz had pointed a gun at him in the clubhouse, something Ruiz denied. The Angels' front office reportedly tried to cover up this incident, showing how poorly they were handling the situation. To understand Alex's struggles, we need to look at the bigger picture. In June 1971, after another on-field incident, Alex made a powerful statement that revealed the depth of his pain. He said, "Hell yes, I'm bitter. I've been bitter ever since I learned I was black. The society into which I was born and in which I grew up and in which I play ball today is anti-black. My attitude is nothing more than a reaction to their attitude." This wasn't just an emotional outburst. It was Alex explaining that his behavior was often a response to the racism he faced. Many people saw him as angry and unpleasant, and his perceived failures were often linked to his race. This only made his emotional distress worse. The hostile environment he faced would naturally fuel what psychiatrists would later call a paranoia-like psychological condition. On June 26, 1971, Angels general manager Dick Walsh suspended Alex indefinitely for not using his best efforts. This decision would change baseball history. Marvin Miller, the executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association, immediately filed a grievance on Alex's behalf. At first, the union's argument was a simple procedural issue, claiming the team hadn't properly explained the suspension. But Miller quickly realized there was a much bigger issue at stake. He changed the union's argument, suggesting that Alex was suffering from an emotional disability and should be placed on the disabled list rather than suspended. This was revolutionary thinking for 1971. The union was arguing that mental and emotional struggles were legitimate medical conditions that deserved the same protections as physical injuries. It was a completely new way of thinking about player welfare. The arbitration hearing was presided over by Robert G. Gill, and the decision was historic. 2 psychiatrists testified about Alex's condition. Most importantly, the psychiatrist who examined Alex at the Angels' own request concluded that he was an emotionally sick man, suffering from a paranoia-like psychological condition. The hearing itself was groundbreaking. For the first time in professional sports history, medical experts were testifying that behavioral issues could stem from legitimate mental health conditions rather than character flaws. The psychiatrist's testimony was detailed and compelling, explaining how Alex's reactions were consistent with someone experiencing severe psychological distress in a hostile environment. What made this case even more significant was the timing. This was 1971, an era when mental health was rarely discussed openly, especially in the masculine world of professional sports. The idea that a tough athlete could suffer from emotional problems was almost revolutionary. The arbitrator had to weigh traditional thinking about player discipline against emerging understanding of psychological wellness. The arbitrator ruled in Alex's favor. He determined that Alex wasn't feigning illness and that the Angels should have placed him on the disabled list instead of suspending him without pay. Alex was awarded $29,970 in back pay, minus the fines he had accumulated. But the real victory was much bigger than the money. The ruling revealed that the Angels' own club doctor had known about Alex's emotional state, but never told the front office. This showed that baseball's organizational structure wasn't equipped to handle mental health issues. More importantly, the ruling legally established that emotional disturbances were just as significant as physical ailments. It forced a new, more humane model on the league and created a foundational legal precedent that would forever change how players and management related to each other. After his reinstatement, Alex never played for the California Angels again. The emotional and professional damage was too great to repair. He was traded to the Cleveland Indians in 1972 and spent the rest of his career moving between teams including the Texas Rangers, New York Yankees, and finally his hometown Detroit Tigers. The statistics tell the story of what the controversy cost him. His performance, measured by on-base plus slugging percentage, dropped significantly after 1971. With the Phillies and Reds in his prime years, he posted solid numbers with averages around 3-13. But after the Angels controversy, his performance with Cleveland in 1972 fell to 259, and he never fully recovered those peak numbers again. Alex himself later reflected on this period, saying, "I lost all my enthusiasm for the game. I never got the enthusiasm back." This wasn't just about baseball skills declining with age. It was about the emotional toll of fighting a system that didn't understand mental health. The institutional failure to properly handle his situation had permanent consequences. Alex couldn't simply shake off his emotional struggles. The damage to his passion and professional effectiveness was lasting. What makes this even more tragic is that his brief success with Cincinnati showed what could have been possible with proper support and understanding from the beginning. After a final season in the Mexican League in 1977, Alex retired from baseball for good. He returned to Detroit to take over his father's truck repair and leasing company. This move away from the public eye wasn't a failure. It was a deliberate choice to find peace away from a world that had never truly understood him. In his private life, Alex found what he had always wanted: a nice, normal life. Those who knew him said he seemed to find some peace. His withdrawal from baseball was ultimately successful because it allowed him to escape the conflict and misunderstanding that had defined his professional career. Alex Johnson passed away on February 28, 2015, in his hometown of Detroit at the age of 72. He died from complications of prostate cancer. His death marked the end of a life defined by extraordinary talent and profound internal struggle. But his legacy extends far beyond his career statistics. Alex Johnson was more than a gifted hitter or a difficult personality. He was an accidental pioneer whose struggles forced a fundamental shift in how professional sports understood player welfare. His landmark grievance case established that mental and emotional distress were legitimate medical conditions deserving of protection. The ruling created a legal and ethical framework that laid the groundwork for the modern understanding of athlete mental health. In a system that was poorly equipped to help him, Alex's personal struggles became a catalyst for change. His case proved that a player's behavior wasn't always a moral failure, but could be a symptom of a condition requiring medical treatment and professional support. While the conflict may have derailed his individual career, his impact on labor relations and the understanding of mental health in sports is immeasurable. Alex Johnson's story shows us that talent alone isn't enough to navigate a complex professional world, and that true progress often begins with the uncomfortable questions posed by those who don't fit the expected mold. Today, when we see athletes speaking openly about mental health, when we see teams employing mental health professionals, and when we see the sports world taking psychological well-being seriously, we're seeing the legacy of Alex Johnson's struggle. He didn't choose to be a pioneer, but his courage in fighting for his rights created a better future for every athlete who came after him. What do you think about Alex Johnson's impact on modern sports? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on how his story changed the game, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the athletes who shaped sports history in ways that went far beyond their playing careers. They called him the most hated player in baseball. In 1976, Mark Fidrych burst onto the scene as the Bird, a curly-haired rookie pitcher who talked to baseballs and crawled around on his hands and knees grooming the mound. America fell in love with him instantly. He won 19 games, led the entire league with a 2.34 ERA, and packed stadiums everywhere he went. To fans watching at home, he was a breath of fresh air during a dark time in American history. The Vietnam War had just ended, Watergate had destroyed trust in government, and cities like Detroit were struggling with crime and poverty. Fidrych seemed like pure joy wrapped in a baseball uniform. But there was another side to this story, one that didn't make it into the feel-good headlines. While casual fans saw a lovable eccentric, the game's toughest veterans saw something completely different. They saw a rookie showboating and disrespecting the sacred traditions of baseball. They saw calculated psychological warfare disguised as quirky behavior, and they were furious about it. The popular narrative says Mark Fidrych was an innocent kid whose career was tragically cut short by injury. But what if that's not the whole truth? What if his own actions, his own arrogance, and his own need for the spotlight directly caused his downfall? The rituals that made Fidrych famous were not as innocent as they seemed. Before every inning, he refused to let the groundskeepers do their job. Instead, he dropped to his hands and knees and meticulously smoothed out every cleat mark around the pitcher's mound. He patted down the dirt like he was tucking in a child. He repaired the pitching rubber with obsessive precision. This wasn't just about having a clean workspace. It was a deliberate delay tactic that forced batters to stand and watch while he put on a show. Then there was the talking to the baseball. Fidrych would hold the ball up to his face and have full conversations with it. He aimed it like a dart before every pitch. After giving up a hit, he would demand that the ball be removed from the game immediately. He would throw it back toward the dugout with disgust, explaining that the ball had a hit in it and needed to go goof around with the other balls so they could beat him up and smarten him up. Think about what that means. Every time an opposing player got a hit, Fidrych turned it into theater. He made sure everyone in the stadium knew he blamed the equipment, not his own pitching. After recording outs, Fidrych would strut around the mound like a peacock. He gave elaborate handshakes to his infielders. He even shook hands with the umpire. He turned routine defensive plays into celebrations of himself. All of this behavior had one clear effect. It kept the attention on Mark Fidrych at all times. The game wasn't about baseball anymore when he was on the mound. It was about watching the bird perform his act. When reporters asked him about it, Fidrych had a convenient explanation ready. He or Sami claimed it was all just his way of staying focused. He said the constant movement and chattering helped him keep his mind in the game. Years later, researchers would suggest he probably had undiagnosed ADHD, and these were coping mechanisms. That sounds nice. That sounds innocent. But it doesn't change the fact that his behavior was extremely effective at disrupting his opponents. Whether he intended to or not, Fidrych had created a psychological weapon. Now is a great time to hit that subscribe button if you want to see more stories about the most controversial figures in sports history. And drop a comment below. Do you think Fidrych's antics were harmless fun, or were they a calculated insult to the game? The New York Yankees of the 1970s were known as the Bronx Zoo because of their volatile clubhouse and intense competitiveness. Manager Billy Martin ran a team full of tough, no-nonsense veterans who played the game the old-school way. They valued quiet intensity and professional grimness. Public displays of emotion or individuality were seen as disrespectful. Players were expected to focus on winning, not entertaining. The Yankees were the guardians of baseball's unwritten rules, and Mark Fidrych violated every single one of them. Thurman Munson was the face of that Yankees team. He was the reigning American League MVP in 1976. He was the team's first captain since Lou Gehrig retired in 1939. Munson had a steely glint in his eye and demanded methodical professionalism from everyone around him. When he saw what Fidrych was doing on national television, he was disgusted. Munson publicly called Fidrych's behavior bush, which in baseball terms means amateurish and unprofessional. It was one of the worst insults you could give a player. But Munson didn't stop there. He issued a direct threat. He told reporters that if Fidrych pulled that stuff in New York, the Yankees would blow him out of town. This wasn't trash talk. This was a warning. The Yankees were putting Fidrych on notice that his Detroit popularity would not protect him in the Bronx. If he showed up and started his circus act at Yankee Stadium, there would be consequences. Fidrych's response made everything worse. When asked about Munson's comments, Fidrych said he didn't know who Thurman Munson was. On the surface, this might sound like the honest answer from a small-town kid who didn't watch much baseball. Fidrych didn't own a television and didn't follow the sport outside of his hometown team. But think about the effect those words had. Thurman Munson was the reigning MVP. He was the captain of the Yankees. He was one of the most respected players in the game. And this rookie acted like Munson was irrelevant. Whether Fidrych meant it as an insult or not, that's exactly how it landed. He had just dismissed the authority of one of baseball's most powerful figures. The Yankees responded with psychological warfare of their own. Greg Nettles, the team's third baseman, decided to fight. Fire with fire. During an at-bat against Fidrych, Nettles jumped out of the batter's box and started having an intense conversation with his own bat. He told the bat to ignore whatever the ball was saying and just hit it over the outfield fence. The message was clear. If Fidrych wanted to turn baseball into theater, the Yankees would mock him right back. Willie Randolph, the Yankees' second baseman, revealed the true psychological damage Fidrych's antics caused. Randolph admitted that he was distracted during his plate appearances against Fidrych. He couldn't focus on hitting because he was forced to stand there and watch this elaborate performance. The frustration built up so intensely that Randolph told reporters he wanted to send a line drive right through Fidrych's head. A professional athlete known for his calm demeanor was so psychologically disrupted that he expressed a violent desire to eliminate the source of his distraction. That's not a normal reaction to facing a good pitcher. That's the reaction of someone whose mental preparation has been completely sabotaged. Fidrych's commercial success gave him immunity from the usual methods of policing rookie behavior. Normally, a veteran player or manager would pull a flashy rookie aside and tell him to tone it down. But Fidrych was too valuable to discipline. In his 18 home starts in 1976, the Tigers averaged over 33,000 fans per game. When he didn't pitch, attendance dropped to less than 14,000. The team was terrible that year, finishing with a losing record, but Fidrych's starts alone brought in nearly half of the stadium's total attendance for the entire season. Teams around the league actually requested that Detroit rearrange its pitching rotation so Fidrych could pitch in their ballparks. This meant that enforcement of the unwritten rules fell entirely to the opposing players. On August 29, 1976, Gene Tenace of the Oakland Athletics decided to deliver that message physically. Tenace was a veteran catcher and first baseman. During the game, Fidrych was running to cover first base on a ground ball. As he approached the bag, Tenace delivered a forearm shiver directly into Fidrych's body. This wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate physical message. Your act has consequences. And here's where Fidrych's innocent persona completely shattered. The lovable, goofy kid who just wanted to have fun on the mound? He disappeared. Fidrych threatened Tenace directly, saying that if there hadn't been men on base, he would have decked him right there. This was the real Mark Fidrych showing through. He wasn't some naive country boy who didn't understand what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was pushing boundaries. He knew he was provoking opponents. And he was fully prepared to fight about it. Now here's the lie they told you about his downfall. The standard story is that Mark Fidrych was an innocent victim of managerial exploitation. Poor kid got overused, hurt his arm, and that was that. Bad luck. But that's not the whole truth. The real truth is that Fidrych's own arrogance and need for the spotlight created the conditions that destroyed his career. The commercial frenzy around Fidrych was his own creation. His antics made him a gate attraction. Teams demanded he pitch in their stadiums. Fans demanded to see the bird perform. Manager Ralph Houck faced immense pressure to maximize Fidrych's starts because the franchise desperately needed the revenue. In 1976, Fidrych completed 24 games. He frequently pitched on short rest during the second half of the season. This workload was unsustainable for a young pitcher with a lanky 175-pound frame. In 1977, the consequences arrived. Fidrych first tore cartilage in his left knee during spring training. Then came the career-ending injury, a torn rotator cuff. The injury went undiagnosed and untreated throughout his playing years. He pitched through the pain trying to maintain his status as a star. He pitched his last major league game on October 1, 1980. The rotator cuff injury wasn't properly diagnosed until 1985 when Dr. James Andrews finally performed surgery. By then, it was far too late. Fidrych never started more than 11 games in any season after 1976. His entire major league career consisted of just 5 seasons and 58 games. If modern pitch counts and diagnostic technology had existed in the 1970s, his career might have been saved, but the point is that his own behavior created the commercial pressure that led to his overuse. He could have toned down the act. He could have focused on pitching instead of performing, but he didn't. He fed the frenzy, and the frenzy destroyed him. After his playing career ended, Fidrych returned to his hometown of Northborough, Massachusetts. He lived a quiet, humble life on a 107-acre farm. Despite his former celebrity status, he worked as a contractor, hauling gravel and asphalt in a 10-wheeler truck. He helped out at his mother-in-law's diner. He coached local youth baseball teams. The man who once demanded the spotlight now lived in complete obscurity. On April 13, 2009, Mark Steven Fidrych died at the age of 54. His death was ruled an accident. He was found pinned underneath one of his Mack trucks. It appeared that his clothing became entangled in the power takeoff shaft while he was performing maintenance, leading to suffocation. Despite all the professional animosity he generated, despite all the veterans who despised his act, Mark Fidrych made an enduring impression on the history and culture of baseball. His story is a reminder of the fragility of athletic talent and the high price of fame. His teammate Willie Horton said that Fidrych brought baseball back to the people, made it popular again, and helped save the game. That's his real legacy. Fidrych proved that individuality and charisma could coexist with elite performance. He changed the tolerance level for personal expression on the pitcher's mound. Whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't ignore him. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of baseball's most controversial figures, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching.